History books tend to give us a static view of pre-Columbian North America, but just as territorial claims of European people have changed in the last 1,000 years, so too have the claims of the American Indian tribes. While the fallout of the conquest of the West by the white tribe is well understood, we often overlook the consequences of the battles between the tribes. My name is Sam Leitner Jr., and I'm a writer from Lander, Wyoming. This is the first in a series of short videos we'll be doing on the amazing history of our wonderful state. For the last 500 years or so, the two indigenous tribes principally contesting over central Wyoming have been the Eastern Shoshone and the Crow. Other western tribes, like the Butte and Northern Cheyenne, have attempted to move into the Wind River Basin, but by and large it's been held by the Crow and Shoshone.
There were pressures that came in from the outside on these people, though. One pressure was from the northeast. The Lakota moved into northeastern Wyoming, and they pushed the Crow to the southwest. They pushed them more towards this valley. About 150 years later, the immigrant trail gets put in across the middle of Wyoming and then diving into the southwest of Wyoming. Being in the southwest Wyoming area, that trail, lots of members of the white tribe, they're harvesting the buffalo from down there. They're harvesting the elk. They're poisoning the waters to some degree with so much human pollution. That put pressure on the Eastern Shoshone to move up into this valley. So both sides are coming at each other from different directions. Both of them want this valley. They're basically fighting for about 150 years over it, 200 years, pretty hard. And then finally, that comes to a very serious battle about 15 miles north of here at a place called Black Mountain.
We know these battles took place, but sources vary on exactly what year in the European calendar. The most commonly cited sources say this took place in 1866, but we now think the more likely year was 1858.
The two tribes meet there. They've been fighting for 3 days, and there's two big chiefs involved. There's Chief Washakie of the Eastern Shoshone, and there's Chief Big Robber of the Crow. And Big Robber is actually out in the fight. Big Robber is aggressively out there fighting with his men. Meanwhile, the Eastern Shoshone chief, Washakie, he's holding back. He's famed as being an incredible hand-to-hand combat fighter, but he's holding back because he's also a very good tactician. He's got fewer men. So he's telling his men, do this, do that. He's giving out orders. While he's doing that, Big Robber is screaming, get out here and fight like a real man. You're so famous. You're so tough. Why don't you come out and fight? Now, Big Robber didn't really want to fight him. All of the peoples in the region, the Lakota, the Kiowa, the Bannock, the Crow, the Northern Cheyenne, they all know who Washakie is. None of them want to fight Washakie. But the Crow leader can see Washakie's getting a lot out of his men. I need to draw him out into the battle. So he's trying. He's screaming insults at the man over his warriors. Washakie doesn't fight him. He keeps working the tactics, and it's working. But then Washakie realizes, even though the Crow seem to be losing more men, there are more of them, and he's got to do something. So he stops the battle and he sends an emissary over to the Crow. The Crow kill the emissary. He sends a second emissary over. First emissary's been killed. He sends a second emissary. The Crow listens to the emissary. He says, my chief wants a parley. So all the tribes come together and they meet. They're on Black Mountain. And Washakie says, Big Robber, this is stupid. This is terrible. We're two old men. We're making our young men fight and die for something, and it's dumb. We need to do a different way here. This is not going to be the way we should end things, by killing off our tribes over this. He says, here's what's going to happen. You and I will fight, just the two of us. We will decide what happens. If I lose, all of my people will leave the Wind River Valley forever. If you lose, your people have to agree, and you have to agree, that the Crow will leave the Wind River Valley forever. This must have been a horrible moment for Big Robber. Think about what he's in. He's been insulting Washakie for a few days now. His men have been listening to those insults. And he's a war chief. He has to command respect with his warriors. So now they're all standing there and they see Washakie call him out. They're going to get out of the fight and they're going to let their two chiefs decide it. He can't say no. He's got to go ahead and take on this guy that's half Bruce Lee, half Mike Tyson in combat. He's going to have to fight him. So he agrees to Washakie's terms. They decide to meet the next day at the base of this hill. Okay. Now the legend says they met on top of the hill, but we don't think they actually met on top of the hill. What's more likely is they met right out here in this field. They all come in, they're all on their horses, and Big Robber's all painted up. He's got his big headdress on, horse is painted. Washakie's men have got his horse painted. They've got the certain colors. He's got his lance out. He's got his big headdress on. So they ride right at each other. Lance is out. Washakie rides right through Big Robber. Just lances him. Jumps off his horse. Pulls out his knife. Cuts open Big Robber's chest. Pulls out his Big Robber's heart. Shows it to all the Crow warriors. And takes a bite of it. And then grabs the lance. Yanks it out of Big Robber. Puts the heart on the end of the lance. Looks at the Crow and says, "It's time for you to go." That's it. The Crow left. The Crow left. They realized that they had to do what Big Robber said. They were an honorable people, and so they did that. They left. And this is where the story now turns to later actions, where we can see how history turns on just the battle of two men, two guys in a fight. History turns on it. For one thing, on all our maps, that hill is now known as Crowheart Butte. But more than just names, maps changed in other ways. When Washakie won, he could go to the white tribe and say, "This is where I want my reservation. I want my people to live in the Wind River Valley. You don't have to listen to the Crow anymore. It's not theirs. It's ours. It belongs to our people." What do you know? The white tribe went along with that. 1868, they grant Washakie a reservation that is basically the entirety of this valley. It's shrunk a little bit, but that's a different story. It shrunk quite a bit, actually. That's a different story. They granted the reservation. And to this day, it still is their reservation. Meanwhile, think of what the Crow had to do. They're being pressed by the Lakota. They've got a war with the Lakota they've got to fight. They're now no longer going to be fighting over this valley. They've got to get a reservation as well from the white tribe. So what are they going to do to get that? They've got to side with the white tribe. And you will find that there were Crow warriors fighting alongside U.S. cavalry and U.S. infantry at all of the major battles with the Lakota. They had to do this. That was the only way they were going to get their own reservation. And it worked. They fought at the Battle of Rosebud. They fought Tongue River. They were even at the Little Bighorn. And what happened? The Crow ended up getting their reservation as well in southern Montana. That remains to this day. The layouts of our states, of the western states, where the reservations were going to be, the names that we have, that all came down to one battle, one fight between two men right here in this field under Crowheart Butte.